Wellness Watch. Patty Friedman is with me again, as I like having her here every time, obviously. And I'm Judy. Nothing's changed.
That hasn't changed. That's a good thing.
But we have been really having some fun picking out categories because wellness is such a huge umbrella, just huge. I mean,
Where do you start? Where do you
a lot of
end?
it overlaps with other phases of it, but I think as much as anything we've talked about, our topic today of stress is as big an issue in people's health these days, particularly, more than ever before.
And it probably doesn't get enough coverage because it really doesn't really have a national,
We need a day for it.
Yeah, we need a day to really a month for it. But
Yeah.
we sometimes, just goes along with everyday life and we don't really focus on it enough. But as I think you looked into information and I looked into information, it really has a big
Well, the way people are
impact.
living their lives these days and working, they're never really away from work because they're kind of expected to be plugged in on the beach in Antigua.
Which is one of the things we should talk about when we get into the list of things.
Unplugging is huge, but I
Yeah.
think that the burden of the competitive nature of jobs and the fact that there aren't always the ones out there that you want, you got to work hard to keep the one you have. I think that's one of the issues. They don't realize how it's hurting them.
Right, right. Stress in the workplace is really huge. And there's a lot of things that go into what causes the stress, and a lot of times stress at work is really brought on by issues that are external,
Right.
and as well as the internal. So trying to find that what are the triggers and what is causing
Some
it.
of it is brought in from home,
Right.
and then the stress from work is brought home.
Yeah.
And
It goes.
you've got a perfect storm there for some pretty unhappy people
Yeah.
and unhealthy people.
And trying to figure out how to deal with it, because how you might deal with your stress at home is different than you might deal with your stress at work. But there are some rules of thumbs, if you will, and I say that thumbs because there's more than one thumb that's going to try help people get through dealing with stress, and it's really important to kind of go through a process. And what works for you on how you handle your stress, or me or anybody else in the audience, is different, and having the approach that works best for you is important. But there are some tips that I think that we can go over, Judy, to really talk about helping people get a plan in place for how they might deal with it
Exactly.
when
And
they're
first
dealing
of
with
all,
stress.
admit, like any other thing, that they have a problem with it.
Right, right.
Because it's the way people all now multitask, I think, leads to stress that we never had before. They're doing a million things at once and sometimes just not satisfied with them all, so they keep doing them
Adding
all.
more.
I think that we're overloading ourselves when we don't have to.
Yeah, we
Prioritize.
take on too much stuff. And one of the things when we talked about, identifying or finding out what's stressing us, a great way that I've heard about, and I actually do myself, is to write or journal or, have a notebook or whatever it is that works best for you. But on a daily basis, just sort of write down, either at the end of the day, middle of the day, wherever it is, and you can go back and reflect and see, okay, so what is a consistent thing that's happening
Interesting.
that's causing stress in your life?
Really helpful.
And you may find that there becomes a pattern. And then you can start to relate to and figure out ways to deal with that stress. So maybe getting the kids out the door is a recurring pattern, or not having your lunch packed so you're constantly late. If it's work related, is one thing. And then at work it may be where you're constantly getting called into meetings and you see a pattern. So what time of year is that? And figuring out, can you plan ahead? So using a journal is not only good for writing down your feelings at the moment, but it's also great for going back and reflecting on what is.
And use it to write a plan.
Yeah, and make a plan
I mean,
from there.
we've talked about plans more than a few times here, because it really matters in most people's lives to have a plan. I found years ago, I got rid of some stress when I began to be able to say no to some of the things. I got, the PTA, will you do that? Will you do this? Will you carpool? And I never was good at saying no. I won't, actually.
Yeah. So we need to work on that with you.
But
And think about why, because we're gonna give a perfect example of why can't you say no? Why do you feel that you can't say no.
You want to please the person who's asking you.
Right. You don't want to let people down.
You don't want to let people down. You've been brought up to be reliable and involved. And I just remember how liberating it was the first time after years of school stuff and kid stuff, and when I got into every group and every committee, I finally, at some birthday, said, I'm now old enough to say no. And I just found a polite way to say, I can't can't do that right now.
And that's
Too busy.
exactly what it is.
To hear that, because
Yeah.
they said, I'd rather have you say that than come in and do it kind of half-heartedly.
It's so true
Right.
that it's like a release or a release of that pent up stress and
Exactly.
energy that it's a weight taken off your shoulder to just say, I can't this time. And another way is you give your permission to say, if you have another event, the next
Don't
time
stop
ask me,
asking
this just isn't a good time. And it's better for everybody because you're not going to put 100% into your commitment, right?
And I think it just helps get you overloaded. When you're saying yes to everything, you're overloaded. And maybe you don't do anything well because of that.
Exactly.
But you're then resentful. Why did I do this? And I can't carpool tonight, and I can't do... I think you just at some point, and usually young parents do a lot of that.
With
saying
kids.
Yes, because you want to be involved for your kids' sake.
Right.
Then you get older and you say,
Yeah, and finding that, starting it earlier and finding the right balance of when and how much you want to be involved in it. It's great to be the team parent or, snack bringer or whatever, but you've got to make sure that you don't overextend because bottom line, it affects you.
It does. Internally, it also makes everyone around you, because you're stressed out, then so are the kids, and that's the last thing you want.
Yeah, and when you start making all those commitments to other groups, other things have to give. So you might give up your exercise, or you might give up sleep, which is one of the worst things, worst things, and that seems to be the first thing to go. So people will stay up late or get up early to try and fit everything in, and that's only going to keep that ball rolling of being stressed, because once you have limited amount of sleep, your body just doesn't function
And as you said, you sacrifice things. You might have to say no to your kid about something if you've got this committee you have to take care of. Everyone can suffer from this. So
Right.
anyway, that's one thing that
Yeah, no,
you and I both have other ideas about what contribute to stress, obviously.
yeah, and everybody's different. Like we said, everybody's different on what brings in stress. But one of the things that you pointed out earlier, or you mentioned, was prioritizing.
Yeah.
And we don't do a good job at prioritizing important things and how much time. So back to that plan, back to that list, you figure out the priority, and you actually have to list them down. Now, some people aren't big list makers, but if you don't have a plan and sort of break down what your day is going to be like, you're setting yourself up to fail again. So find what's important, get those in a list. And one thing I always say is, in that list has to be some me time.
I was going to say, because one of the ways or there are several ways to relieve some of the stress. One of them is exercising, or even just allowing yourself some time to go out and walk around the block a few times. That's one way. Another way is just to go in the other room for something, do something for yourself. I think if you can decrease your workload, whatever that means in terms of work or homework.
Yeah.
If that laundry can wait another day, just sit down and take it easy. Learn how to get away and just do some deep breathing and meditating if you know how.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to build into your routine or your schedule your own time.
Right.
And then picking, so for you it may be exercising, for me it may be just sitting in a room and listening to quiet music or going to get a massage. So everybody's own me time, you have to figure out what that is. But if you don't have it built in the schedule, it's the first thing that gets taken off the list. And and I'm going to say not all of us, we have to put ourselves as a priority, because if we don't, we're only setting ourselves up.
That is the worst part of it.
Yeah,
Some people-
and we're the first ones to go to take ourselves off the list. And there's nobody more important than yourself.
You got it. So other stresses, well, we know what the stresses can be, it's what to do about them. And it's so hard to sit down and say, I don't have to work that hard, or I can cut out of the office a little early. And then you start to think, well, yeah, I could really suffer that way, that's no good.
That's not
So
a
you
good
have to
option.
actually think about what you can do to just come down.
Yeah, yeah,
And as you said, there are other ways, lots of ways to do it.
yeah. And, you know, if you talk about the exercise or physical activity, because I don't necessarily like to use the word exercise,
Right.
because exercise gets this,
Pictures of gym.
yeah, exercise is a gym and it's hard and I'm going to sweat and I don't want to do it. So people immediately put up a
Right.
barrier.
Right.
But if we say activity, what's your activity going to be?
Go do some, if you like knitting, if you do crafts of any kind,
Well,
put
hobbies.
that on the calendar.
Yeah.
Put crafts on your calendar so you could wait. It's a date you're making with yourself, and you're going to go do that. You could. I do jigsaw puzzles all that.
Yeah.
I find that so brainlessly wonderful. That
Yeah,
I don't have to
because you
think.
can just do it. We do a lot of puzzles at our house too,
Yeah.
and it's a great time to just sort of not have to think.
It's mindless, and I'm all for that.
Mindless is not bad.
Mindless is good. I've earned my mindless. I've earned my mindless years. Yeah, I think, and I think the physical part often is what a lot of people, professionals, do recommend for
Yeah,
releasing. And I was told that walking is one of the best things to do because there's a repetitive thing where you get in this wonderful routine, and it's something rhythmical about it that it just kind of relaxes you.
Yeah.
Never thought of it that way.
it's true though. It makes sense, doesn't it? It really does make
And
sense.
again, it's mindless, but
Yeah.
it's awfully good for you.
And it's great to go with a group, but it's also good to do some by yourself because then you're not impacted or, you know, influenced. So you can just get your own
Focus on being
time.
outdoors, focus on what you're hearing, seeing. I think
Yeah,
I do.
listen
I
to
do
the
some
birds.
walks around our neighborhood alone all the time, and it's just look at the new house. Look at the turkeys over there. I mean,
Yeah.
fun stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting outside now that we can do it more
Oh,
is number one in terms of exercise.
the fresh air is
Yeah.
huge. But you know, I sort of want to go back, Judy, too.
Yeah.
It's good to be by yourself,
Yep.
but also if you have someone that you trust, it's not a bad thing to just be able to vent and
agree.
just let everything out,
Totally agree.
clear your head, let them deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Here, now I feel better. How do you feel,
better,
right?
don't worry about it.
Yeah.
No,
But having that support.
You need support in everything we've ever talked about in your whole life.
Yeah.
But I agree with that, having someone who understands and is non-judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not be all bad stuff, it may be someone who can help you. What would you say, how would you rearrange my day better? What do you see that I'm
Right.
overworking? And
Yeah. I need somebody to just point me in a different
what do
direction.
you do when you want to relax and get ideas? It's not a bad subject, it's something
No.
everyone can
No.
say, oh my gosh, let me tell you what I do that works.
Right.
It's nothing shameful, it's smart.
No, and that's why it's so important to be able to recognize when you are stressed and figuring out what the best way is for you as a person to deal with that stress. So we've talked about journaling, we've talked about physical exercise, or activity, we've talked about venting
Yeah.
or being with somebody, we've talked about just getting away and clearing your head, and whether it's meditating, music, finding a hobby, and just doing something on your own time. Sleeping, talked about sleeping as well.
Stress really does a job on sleep.
Oh, huge.
It can do a job on your body, your weight, your whole thing, but sleep is the number one thing we need, I think, more than anything, and it's the one thing no one's getting anymore.
Yeah, it's
It's
scary.
an epidemic of insomnia.
Yeah, and there's a great book that Adriana Huffington has out right now about sleep. And the thing with sleep that's really important is that you have a consistent routine.
Yes.
That you go to bed at the same time, you get up at the same time, that you have quiet time, if you will, and what everyone's quiet time might be different. So for me, it might be playing soft music. For somebody, it might be listening to a waterfall or rain, whatever it is. It may be just complete silence and nothing.
Yeah.
But having a routine statistically shows that you get better sleep. And it takes a while.
It does. I've
To
been
get
through
that?
Sleep studies, and the hygiene that goes with insomnia and curing it or preventing it It's fascinating stuff, but one of them is, first of all, nowadays, it's get away from your screens for a while.
Absolutely, you shouldn't have screens in the
So-
bedroom.
That's stressful and you don't even know it. It's working on your eyes, your body, and that can keep you awake. We all
Absolutely.
know that. But it's also, the pattern, you need the pattern, going to sleep at the
Circadian
same
rhythms,
time,
yeah.
same covers and all that stuff. But I think that, I'm trying to think of the other things that I was told to do, because caffeine late in the day isn't great.
Yeah, alcohol,
Alcohol, same thing.
nicotine, they're either stimulants or
All of you by
depressants.
now.
Yeah, something for all of you, but yeah, any of those can definitely impact.
Yeah.
And if you are stressed, those are things that you shouldn't default to.
No.
So sometimes people
right.
will drink, I hear people 3 or 4 cups of coffee or
Late in the
that martini or Manhattan or, bottle of wine or whatever in the afternoon. And those are some really bad decisions
Yeah.
to help with
Late in the
stress.
day. I mean,
Alcohol's a depressant, can be a
It is.
stimulant, but you really need to be
it's a
careful.
go-to thing
It
for
is,
people.
yeah.
And then, first of all, that makes it sort of scary.
Yep,
It shouldn't ever be a go-to thing.
no,
But if that's your answer to sleep, I think you're fooling yourself.
right.
But unless it knocks you out, and then I'm wrong.
That's right.
Maybe out there, you're all drinking a lot and getting sleep.
Maybe.
I don't
Let's
know.
hope
I
not.
don't think so, but I hope not, right.
And the other thing is not to rely on sleep. I see all these sleep pills, and
There are a lot.
there's a lot out there. And trying to keep yourself away from those and trying to figure out a way to get away from those if you're on them
Yeah.
would be in your best interest.
I have a friend who has one of those white noise machines, I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, white noise.
There's lots of choices,
Yeah.
water and wind and birds, and she swears by that for getting to sleep. And it's a natural,
Yeah.
non-medical, nothing, good way to do it.
Another thing is to take a warm bath or warm shower at night, or to have certain scents, like if you have diffusers and oils right now are huge,
Yes.
and having, lavender's a big one for
Lavender
sleep,
yeah.
and just having something that comforts you. I mean, really, bottom line is, when you feel comfort, think of a baby. Take it even back to early days in life. When they're comfortable and they're content
No stress.
and they have no stress, they sleep.
If we could all have the stress level of a baby, we'd be a
Right.
healthier society.
We would.
Every way.
Yeah,
Drugs wouldn't be sold and
be a different.
surgeons wouldn't be doing anything.
Right, right. And I mean, I don't want people to think the things that we're saying is easy, because it can be a challenge for people to, you said right at the top of the show was, people are thinking that they need to be plugged in from Antigua when they're on break. That absolutely is real in the corporate world, that people feel that they need to be plugged in.
They could lose their job while they're
Exactly.
away.
And bottom line, it needs to be where workplaces are working with their people to get them to feel like they don't have to be doing that. That, yeah, you need to get your job done. Understandably, we get that. But again, you've got to figure out a way to do that and still be able to not feel like you're constantly on call.
And if this is your legitimate vacation, no one should be threatening
No.
your job. I mean, I think it's France who is now trying to just, making it a rule.
No,
The companies
yeah.
cannot expect you to be linked in when you're away.
Yeah,
What a difference that
it
would
would make a huge difference.
make, even at a day or two at a time.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, don't take screens into the bedroom.
Right.
And I was told that today's population with kids, they have 3 or 4 screens in their bedroom. They take their dinner into the bedroom and they just vegetate.
Yeah.
And
Nothing healthy about that.
No.
Nothing healthy about
no.
that.
I think I've learned myself to stop using a screen an hour before at least.
Yeah. That's a great rule of thumb.
On my sleep.
Yeah, it does. It totally impacts it. Being tuned in, if you will. Sometimes I'd like to refer to it as tuned out,
Tuned out.
depending on what you're doing, is to really get rid of the screens.
Yeah.
And
That's hard.
it is hard.
Everybody.
It is hard. But when we need to research and find out when there's one day in the year when it's no screen time.
It should be, shouldn't it?
Well, there is. There
Is
is a
there?
day similar to when we
What
did
country?
U.S.
Really?
Yeah, there's a no screen time day. I can remember actually when my daughter
That's
Taylor was in school that they actually had it through the school where they would say there's no screen time, and you kind of made a commitment that you weren't going to have any screen time.
They should make you leave all your screens in the school building when you go home.
Yeah, and no TV, no laptops, no iPads, no phones, nothing. Wouldn't that be crazy?
Healthy decision someone's making.
Yeah.
I think I told you that my daughter has her daughter. She brings her phone up to her mother's dresser.
And can't have it at night.
7, and all her friends are on the screen all night. So she catches up with them in the morning, which makes her feel like a little bit of a nerd because she hasn't been involved with the discussions, but she's sleeping.
Yeah.
She's not up till 12.
And she'll get caught up.
She will, and I think, I know if knowing my parents, how they were, I would never be allowed to have a screen out of their sight. I mean, they used to say have the kids on the computer on the kitchen table, so you first of all can see what they're on.
Oh, absolutely.
And it shouldn't be anything they're going in to hide on. So
Right.
that would, if they're running away and won't let you see it, then you should be nervous.
Yeah, and having their password so that you can
Yes.
get into any of their,
She does that too.
yeah.
I think the stress, stress is a big word. We've touched on some of the little ways. I mean, they're not little,
No,
they're big.
big things.
And they're big particularly in that it's back to what we've talked about before. It's big in that it's a big change.
Hmm.
But it shouldn't be that, it shouldn't be something you don't want to try. If you're feeling stressed, you don't want ulcers, that's another thing, ulcers and stuff, you don't want that.
No.
And you don't want to be so tired every day and night that you're a zombie and not really useful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And so the other thing too is it comes back to thinking about positive thinking. So, and self-help and
Yeah.
self-talk,
Yep.
that, that could be one of the things that people do is instead of the negative, like I can't get this done or I'm so
Right.
overstressed or immediately people start going to the negative.
Yes.
Negative is, okay, I have a lot on my plate. How can I get it done? What steps do I need to do? So then you start having this conversation with, I'll feel better if I at least knock 2 of these things off my
Right.
list instead of, trying to do 4 of them and get none of them done.
or doing them poorly.
Or doing them poorly. And so really having a conversation with yourself about being positive and getting through it. And one of the tips that I thought was really interesting is for people to volunteer or get involved,
Yes.
because then you realize that your stress may not really
We don't
be
have
as
a
bad.
problem, too. I mean, I volunteer in the cancer center and I don't have a problem,
Yeah,
ever, never have, comparatively.
yeah,
I think volunteering is, I think, and I read that too. It is such an out of yourself process. You're present with these people, but it's not about you.
right.
They can get you into conversation and ask you about yourself, and that happens, but it's about them. And when you get out of yourself, you just somehow, everything you've been worried about up to that point
Hmm.
is not on your plate, at least while you're doing it.
Well, it puts life in perspective,
It
and
does.
and you start realizing what's really important and what things that need to sort of be reevaluated in your life. And it causes you to pause. It causes you to step back and to really regroup and
Yeah.
rethink about what is going on in your life that you think is so awful and so stressful when other people are dealing with much worse. And people will get through it, but having that process or that plan in place of how it's going to help, because everybody has stress.
Of course.
We can totally acknowledge that. We all have it. It's just how you let it affect you, and just how you let it affect you and how you deal with it.
And how you can learn not to let it affect you.
Right.
But I think part of that goes back to something we're big on by making a list, because if you have a list of what your day looks like and then prioritize, do you have to do it all now or then or tonight or tomorrow? Can it take a few days? If you can do that and say, well, this really isn't an A, I'll put it down as a D.
And if I get to it,
If I get to, right, that doesn't have to happen today.
Yeah.
These two do. You might find your whole load a lot lighter just because you haven't, that multitasking pressure
Yeah.
goes away to some degree.
Mhm.
There's so many ways we all can get caught up and so tight, and just,
easy to get off track.
it is.
And you just have to figure out a way to get back on track,
Yeah.
because it is easy to do, to get off track when people have so many things
Well,
going on.
I think, I always go back to thinking about what you've said before many times, the me time, if that gets built into every day, it doesn't have to be for hours, it can't be probably in most
And it shouldn't
cases.
be.
But if you've got 10 minutes to a half hour of just kind of away, kind of say to yourself, those problems are over there, I'm going outside and pick weeds or something. I'm just going to do something that gets me away from
Yeah.
pressure.
Yeah.
And I also feel good doing it. Be with friends.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wonderful way. A friend or friends, just you get away from any pressure of, what did I not just get done? You don't think that way.
You don't
just
worry
enjoy
about
that
it.
time.
Yeah. And planning getaways. I mean, and a getaway doesn't have to be to Antigua or Aruba or Hawaii or Europe or wherever.
Right.
A getaway can just be going out of your own environment,
Yeah.
because when you're at home, you know, there are 101 things to do. You
That's
want to
what
do
we all
laundry, you got to, that's where a lot of the stress is. So building in time away and doing a getaway is not only healthy for yourself, but it's also healthy for your family, because you're doing things together in a more relaxed, fun environment.
Well, you're a better parent.
Yeah, better
But
parent.
I think that's true, and it could be, we like to just get in the car and go somewhere where we don't even know where we're going. That's kind of fun. You just are kind of, carefree.
Mm-hmm.
But the home is where all the stress seems to be. Yes, work stress, but at home you've got so many responsibilities that are all important, but they are life-threatening. So you can,
They can wait.
they can wait.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, which we have to do,
Oh.
I know, I just wanted to throw Patty's thing out again, because I like telling people
Oh.
what she's up to these days, besides sitting here yakking with me.
Yeah.
And you've got a wellness,
Yeah, so Wellness Game Plan is the business. So it's really about, I help people with developing plans on whether it's stress related or fitness related or life related, just helping people get into a better place.
Yeah.
And wellnessgameplan.com, I'm on Facebook, and pretty
really
easy.
on Facebook.
Ah.
she's all over the place.
She's all over the place.
Oh my God.
Twitter, Instagram, get it all.
great.
Because I really think it's important. And, you know, I do a motivational moment every day, which we've seen
46, I think.
52.
I
52
do
today.
acknowledge them all.
Yes.
I love track.
So it's really, again, about helping people think about every day in a different light, and trying to keep people to think about the positive and getting a plan in place. And when you're challenged or when you're having difficulty, I'm the support that you might need
Yes.
to get you
And
through.
you need help sorting it out.
Yeah.
You try and try, but you get yourself right back in that
Yeah.
same little knot.
Yeah,
So anyway, I like to remind people of that.
Thank
every
you.
now and then.
yeah.
She's good at what she does, and we're good at what we do, so we'll be back.
Thank you. What a great selling point. I think it's great.
Anyway.
And don't be stressed.
Yeah,
So,
don't get stressed. We'll be with you soon.
so homework. We always have homework.
Homework.
So the homework would be to each day figure out a plan, prioritize, set time for you somewhere in your schedule. And like Judy said, it could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but find something in your day that is just about you, where you can just diffuse or have a hobby and do a puzzle, whatever it is. That's your homework.
You feel good. It's
Yeah.
refreshing and it's healthy, so we're all about health. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we will see you here next time.
Thanks, Judy.